talk a little bit about should you consider a private contractor for debris removal versus Cal Recycle contractor. Doing so gives you the option of leaving your foundation, your driveway, etc. As I said at the very beginning, they have now backed off and said in some cases they're going to leave some piers, where at first they were adamantly saying that they were going to take it all out. But I'll get in a second into how you determine whether or not to leave your foundation. But the bottom line is, if you hire a private contractor, you can say, I want this taken away, I want this taken away. Obviously, you have to get the hazardous materials and ash taken away, but you don't have to have everything else taken away. But FEMA's not necessarily going to do that. It is highly likely that it will cost less. But does that matter if the government program says you don't have to pay any amounts over your excess debris removal coverage? Well, in some parts of the right of entry permit, it sounds like they're saying you don't have to pay any more than the excess. But if you're having to fight with your insurance company to even get your limits, I've already covered that. That to me is a big issue. Are there any other potential advantages? As I look at that right of entry permit, I think liability is a big one. There are liability disclaimers in there, very much so. Some of the private contractors who were at the press conference were voicing opposition based on the fact that they have to carry liability insurance. They carry liability insurance that says if they come on and do the debris removal for you and they damage something that they shouldn't, they've got liability insurance. Now, the explanation that was given at the press conference was, well, yes, we require all these subcontractors to have it. And somebody says, well, if you require them to have it, how come the right of entry permit says they're not liable? I didn't hear a good answer to that. But again, let's talk about Lake County. Septic systems. A lot of them were virtually destroyed. People went out and they marked, if they knew where they were, where their drain fields were, where their septic systems were. A lot of them got destroyed. As far as I know, FEMA did not come back and pay a dime. And I know a lot of you over here are going to be on city sewer. Over there, people are spending $12,000 to $15,000 to replace some of those damaged systems out of their pockets. They didn't have any more insurance money to pay for it. People that asked, their driveways were undamaged. They said, please don't, leave my driveway. In some cases, as far as I know, FEMA did agree to not take out the driveways, but they got so damaged that they still end up having to come out later on, and now people have got to pay to have it taken out because they got so torn up. They're not getting any compensation for that. So those are some issues. Private contractors will, in many cases, come in with smaller equipment. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Were they used in the Valley and Clayton fire? Private contractors used? And the answer is yes. I spoke directly with the head of the Department of Environmental Health and asked him if he had any statistics. He told me that for the Valley fire, about 20% of the debris removal was done by private contractors. But you have to understand, if you've never been over there, it's a very sparsely populated county. Lakeport with 5,000 is the biggest community. Most of these little communities are 1,000, 1,500 people. And you can't get to Lake County unless you go over the mountains on a 2-lane road, pulling backhoes and things. So they didn't really have access to a lot of outside contractors. I believe that Santa Rosa is close enough to very populous areas and has roads and so forth that I think you'll probably see a good supply of private contractors available to work over here. Clayton fire, he told me that about 25% were done by private contractors. So what does that cost? Well, we had 5 of people who eventually became our clients hired private contractors. So I know this is a little bit fuzzy if you can read it or not, but over here is the debris removal cost with a private contractor, and over here is what the 5% coverage amounted to. $36,000 in cost, $99,000 in coverage. Big house. $28,000 in cost, $84,000 in coverage. Again, another big house, quite a bit of insurance. $44,000 in cost, $88,000 in coverage, still only half. $12,000 in cost, $19,000, almost $20,000 in coverage. $21,000 in cost, $53,000 in coverage. I do not know of any instances where people use private contractors and it exceeded their coverage amounts.